Lucas knew exactly how his daughter died because he had watched it happen 142 times. Most people believe that time is a river, flowing endlessly in one direction, carrying us away from our mistakes. But for Lucas, time wasn't a river, it was a cage. And inside that cage, the only thing that mattered was a rusted, red sedan. A rainy Tuesday in November, and the little girl in the yellow raincoat, who never made it to the other side of the street. He had spent a decade drowning in the silence of his empty house, surrounded by thousands of ticking clocks, none of which could tell him the only time that mattered. The time he had left before he lost her forever. But tonight, the ticking stopped. Tonight, Lucas wasn't going to just watch the tragedy. Tonight, he was going to rewrite the laws of physics with his own blood. The antique shop always smelled of dust and suspended time, a scent that clung to Lucas like a second skin. He was a man out of phase with the world, a ghost haunting his own life. 10 years had passed since Sophia's death, yet for Lucas, the wound was as fresh as the rain that slicked the pavement on that cursed morning. He spent his days repairing watches for people who were always in a hurry, people who didn't understand that time was a currency you could never earn back. It was during a particularly violent thunderstorm that he found the box. It was tucked away in the false bottom of his grandfather's workbench. A man known in family lore as an eccentric inventor who vanished without a trace in the late 40s. Inside the velvet-lined case lay a pocket watch that defied explanation. It had no numbers, only concentric rings of shifting constellations and a heavy, cold vibration that hummed against his fingertips. When Lucas wound the crown, the thunder outside didn't just fade, it reversed. The rain droplets suspended in midair, shimmering like diamonds in the dim light of the shop, before shooting upward back into the clouds. The nausea hit him, first a violent, visceral lurch, as if his soul was being pulled through a straw. The world dissolved into a blur of light and static, and when his vision cleared, the shop was gone. The smell of dust was replaced by the smell of ozone and wet asphalt. He was standing on the corner of 4th and Elm. He looked at the digital watch on his wrist. November 12th, 8:02 a.m. 10 years ago. Across the street, standing by the bakery window, was Sophia. She was adjusting her backpack, her breath visible in the cold morning air. Seeing her wasn't like seeing a ghost. It was like remembering how to breathe after holding his breath for a decade. His first instinct was primal. He ran. He screamed her name, his voice cracking with the sheer desperation of a father given a second chance. He reached her just as she stepped off the curb. He grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back violently onto the sidewalk. "Sophia, wait!" he gasped, tears streaming down his face. She looked at him, terrified by this stranger who knew her name, and took a step back. In that moment of confusion, she tripped over a loose cobblestone. She fell backward, not into the path of the red sedan, but directly into the path of a speeding city bus that had swerved to avoid a puddle. The sound was different this time, heavier, more final, but the result was the same. The universe had corrected itself. Lucas stood over her broken body, the screams of the crowd fading into a high-pitched ring in his ears. The watch in his pocket grew scorching hot, and before the police could touch him, the world dissolved again. He woke up on the floor of his shop, 10 years in the future, screaming. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He wound the watch again, and again, and again. Each time, he tried a different variable. He slashed the tires of the red sedan. Sophia was hit by a delivery truck instead. He called in a bomb threat to her school to keep her home. The boiler in his house exploded, taking her with it. He tried to physically restrain her. She ran from him in fear and slipped on the ice. It became a sickening experiment in causality. He learned the hard way that time is obstinate. It resists change. Sophia's death was a fixed point, a knot in the timeline that refused to be untied. The universe would bend probability, defy logic, and conjure impossible coincidences just to ensure she died at 8:05 a.m. on that Tuesday. By the 100th attempt, Lucas was a broken man. He was physically deteriorating, his body ravaged by the radiation of temporal displacement. His hair had turned white, his hands shook, and his eyes held the 1,000-yard stare of a soldier who had seen too much war. He sat in the rain on the corner of 4th and Elm, hidden in the shadows, watching the scene play out for the 101st time. He stopped trying to interfere. Instead, he just watched. He needed to understand the mechanics of the tragedy. He watched the red sedan approaching. He watched the driver, and that's when he saw it. The driver wasn't drunk. He wasn't texting. He was shielding his eyes. A blinding flash of blue light had erupted from the Alawaitha, exact spot where Lucas usually arrived from the future. The driver, blinded by the sudden glare, swerved instinctively, jumping the curb and hitting Sophia. The realization hit Lucas harder than the grief. The flash of light was the Serenkov radiation from his own time jump. The distraction that killed his daughter wasn't a random accident. It was him. He was the anomaly. In his desperate attempts to save her, he had become the architect of her destruction. The loop was closed. He had killed her by trying to save her. The paradox tightened around his throat like a noose. If he didn't go back, she would die because of the original accident. If he did go back, his arrival caused the accident. It seemed impossible, a cruel joke written by a sadistic god. Lucas returned to the future one last time. He sat in the silence of his shop, holding the watch. He realized that to break the loop, he couldn't just change the variables. He had to remove the cause, but the cause was the car, and the catalyst was his arrival. He needed to be in two places at once. Or rather, he needed to be the variable that didn't belong. He looked at the coordinates on the watch. He didn't dial in the time of the accident. He dialed in a time 10 minutes prior. And he didn't aim for the alleyway. He aimed for the interior of the red sedan, 3 miles away. This jump felt different. It felt like a goodbye. The pain was excruciating, as if his molecular structure was being torn apart atom by atom. He materialized not on the street, but in the passenger seat of the red sedan. The car was empty. The owner had run into a convenience store for a pack of cigarettes, leaving the engine running. Lucas, gasping for air, his body flickering in and out of existence due to the instability of the jump, climbed into the driver's seat. He didn't look like himself anymore. The temporal radiation had disfigured him, aging him 50 years and seconds. He put the car in gear. He drove. He drove with a calm he hadn't felt in a decade. He knew the route the driver would have taken. He drove toward 4th and Elm. As he approached the intersection, he saw the alleyway where his other self, the younger, foolish Lucas from a previous loop, was about to arrive. He saw the flash of blue light erupt. In the original timeline, this is where the driver swerved right into Sophia. Lucas gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. Tears blurred his vision as he saw her alive, breathing, perfect, standing on the corner. So looked up, startled by the light. "I love you, Sophia," he whispered, though she could never hear him. Instead of swerving away from the light and toward the girl, Lucas slammed his foot on the accelerator and jerked the wheel hard to the left. The car careened across the median, smashing through the guardrail and plunging into the ravine below. The impact was deafening, a symphony of twisting metal and shattering glass that echoed through the valley. Then, silence. On the street above, Sophia stood frozen. She watched the car disappear over the edge. She didn't cross the street. She didn't die. The police arrived. The ambulance arrived. They pulled a body from the wreckage, an old man with no identification, wearing clothes from a decade ago, clutching a pocket watch that had stopped ticking. Sophia went home that day. She grew up. She went to college. She never forgot the old man who drove off the cliff. The accident that somehow felt like it saved her, though she never understood why. 20 years later, Sophia stood in a high-tech laboratory. She was a renowned theoretical physicist specializing in temporal mechanics. She had spent her life trying to understand the nature of time, driven by a childhood mystery she couldn't solve. Among the artifacts recovered from the strange accident that shaped her childhood was the pocket watch. She had kept it all these years. Tonight, she finally cracked the code. She analyzed the isotopic decay of the watch's casing. It wasn't just old, it was impossibly old. It had aged millions of years in a closed loop. She looked at the coordinates engraved on the back. They weren't just numbers, they were a message. A handwriting she recognized, her father's. The realization cascaded over her like a tidal wave. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He hadn't just died of a heart attack 10 years after she survived. The man in the car, the old man. It was him. He had lived an eternity of torture, looping through time, erasing his own existence to carve out a sliver of reality where she could live. Tears fell onto the cold metal of the desk. But Sophia knew the rules of the game now. She understood the Chronos paradox. For her to survive, the loop had to be maintained. The watch had to find its way back to her father in the past. If she didn't send it back, he would never find it, never save her, and she would never exist to send it back. With a trembling hand, she placed the watch into the temporal displacement chamber she had built. She wasn't just sending a machine, she was sending a life raft. She was sending his legacy. She typed in the coordinates. The antique shop, the stormy night, the grandfather's chest. She pressed the button, the machine hummed. The same blue light filled the room, and the watch vanished. Sophia smiled through her tears. The circle was unbroken. Her father was dead, but in the infinite loop of time, he was also driving that car right now, saving her again and again, forever. A guardian angel, trapped in a paradox of his own making, fueled by the only force in the universe stronger than gravity, a father's love. If this story messed with your head or touched your heart, you need to join our community. We explore the darkest corners of sci-fi, paradoxes, and emotional storytelling every single week. So, hit that subscribe button right now. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss the next loop. Smash the like button to help this video break the algorithm, and turn on the notification bell so you're always here on time. And I want to hear from you in the comments. If you had a watch that could turn back time, but every use took a year off your life, would you use it? And what would you change? Let's discuss down below.